We tend to talk about cancer like it's one single disease. But today, we're diving into a case where that couldn't be further from the truth. We're unpacking the story of esophageal cancer. And it's really a fascinating tale of two completely different diseases, where your lifestyle and even where you live on the planet can change everything.
All right, so to really get into this, we've got to start with a big picture. We need to understand the sheer scale of the problem, because on the world stage, esophageal cancer is a huge deal. But as you're about to see, its impact is felt very, very differently depending on where you are. So let's start with a question, just to put this all into perspective. When you think about the deadliest cancers, what comes to mind? Probably lung, colorectal, breast, right? Well, what if I told you that the world's seventh deadliest cancer is one you might not even have on your radar?
And there it is. According to the very latest data from 2022, esophageal cancer takes almost 500,000 lives every single year. That makes it the seventh leading cause of cancer death on the entire planet. This is a formidable global challenge, no question about it. But here's where the story gets really specific. Take a look at the geography. An absolutely staggering 75% of all people living with esophageal cancer are in Asia. This region is so well known for it, it's even called the esophageal cancer belt. And that clue right there is absolutely central to our story.
But here's the big twist. Just talking about esophageal cancer as one thing is, frankly, completely misleading. That huge number we just saw and that massive concentration in Asia, well, it's hiding a much, much more complex reality. And this is the most crucial point to understand. We are not dealing with one disease here. The term esophageal cancer is really just an umbrella for two main types. Each one has its own cause, its own preferred location in the body, and its own global footprint. This is where our tale of two cancers really begins. And this chart just lays it all out perfectly. On the left, you've got squamous cell carcinoma, or ESCC for short. Notice it comes from the lining cells, and, importantly, it's linked to external irritants. Then on the right, you've got adenocarcinoma, or EAC. This one's totally different. It comes from glandular cells much lower down, and it's driven by internal problems, like chronic acid reflux.
So let's unpack that first story, the story of ESCC. This is the global dominator. This is the type that accounts for that massive worldwide burden we saw earlier, especially inside that esophageal cancer belt in Asia.
The story of ESCC really boils down to chronic, direct damage to the lining of the esophagus. The main drivers are things we're pretty familiar with. The combination of smoking and heavy drinking, for example, is incredibly powerful. They work together to multiply the risk. But it also includes things like poor nutrition and even thermal injury from drinking extremely hot liquids over and over, which literally burns and damages the cells. Okay, so now let's switch gears and talk about the second story. This one is unfolding mainly in the Western world, and it's the dramatic and frankly very concerning rise of esophageal adenocarcinoma, or EAC. Its story has nothing to do with external irritants, it's all about our internal environment. I mean, just look at this number. It's staggering. In the United States alone, the rate of EOC has exploded by over 600% in just the past few decades. That makes it one of the absolute fastest rising cancers in high-income countries, and we absolutely have to understand why. So what's behind this explosion? Well, the risk factors for EAC are completely different. The main culprit is chronic gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD, which many of us just know as severe, constant heartburn. This can eventually lead to a precancerous condition called Barrett's esophagus. And another huge factor here is obesity, especially fat around the midsection. So how in the world does something as common as heartburn lead to a deadly cancer? Well, it turns out there's this really well-understood, step-by-step biological pathway that actually transforms the very cells lining our esophagus. You can see the whole process right here. It all starts with chronic GERD, which just bathes the lower esophagus in stomach acid. The body, trying to protect itself, actually replaces the normal lining cells with tougher, more acid-resistant glandular cells. That change is what we call Barrett's esophagus. But over time, these new cells can become abnormal. That's dysplasia. And eventually, they can morph into a full-blown adenocarcinoma. And look, we're not just talking about simple irritation here. As this quote makes clear, scientists have shown that the stuff in the reflux, the acid, the bile, It directly causes DNA damage in those esophageal cells. It's basically creating an environment that can push those cells straight down the path to becoming cancerous. And what about obesity? This is where it gets really interesting because it plays two different roles here. First, there's the mechanical part. Extra belly fat physically pushes on the stomach, which makes reflux worse. But it's also a biological problem. That fat tissue is actually metabolically active, sending out all these hormones and signals that can act like fertilizer for cancer cells, encouraging them to grow and multiply. Okay, so let's bring our two stories together and put it all on the table. You've got ESCC, the global dominator. Its story is about external irritants, things we smoke, drink, or eat that directly damage the esophagus. Then you have EAC, the Western riser. Its story is all about our internal chemistry, driven by reflux and the metabolic chaos linked to obesity. Two totally different diseases with different causes and different geographies, all hiding under one name.
This tale of two cancers is more than just a story about the esophagus. It's a huge wake-up call. The incredible rise of EAC shows us how massive shifts in our modern way of life aren't just raising cancer rates, they are fundamentally changing the kinds of cancers we're getting. It's proof that the story of disease is always being rewritten by the way we live. And that leaves us with a pretty heavy question. What story are we writing for ourselves right now?